Hello everyone, this is Cherisse LaSalle, and I'm submitting the second part of my second associate trainer video. This is my horse Charlie, who's an off-track thoroughbred that I've had for about 1.5 years now, and this is a lunging session. So what you're seeing right now is I'm asking Charlie to step away and most specifically to yield his hindquarters as he does so. And he responded by resisting a little bit. So I had to get pretty firm there for a second, and then he responded nicely. Charlie is one who was a racehorse for a very long time. He raced as a 7-year-old, so he kind of has it in his mind that he can do whatever he wants, and he can be pretty pushy at times, so I do have to get very firm with him at times and explain very clearly with my body language that he needs to be respectful and he needs to be obedient when I'm asking him to do something. And here he seemed like he got a little confused. He was kind of crowding me, so I just keep asking him to step away and yield. And there he yielded his hindquarters really nicely, but I'm still wanting him to move even further away from me, so I'm still asking him to yield those hindquarters, and he's getting the idea. This is not a typical start to a lunging session for us. I'm not sure why this particular day he was kind of confused. Most days he just goes right out and does his thing, and he doesn't give me any trouble, but for some reason he was a little bit pushy on this day. So it's important that when a horse gets pushy with you, that you don't overreact, but you do need to be very clear to them that you are the one who's in charge and that they need to respect you, because they're a very large animal and things could quickly, not in this specific situation, but things could potentially become dangerous for you if you let a horse just sort of push you around. And Charlie's a very sweet guy. Most of the time he's extremely compliant, but he does have his moments where he tries to see if he could be the boss. And actually he does that in the herd a lot as well, because he frequently comes out of the pasture with bite marks. And I know that he's tried to push somebody around who responded by saying, "Nope, you can't push me around." So at the beginning of Charlie's lunging sessions, I try not to push him too much. I try to just kind of let him go out on the edge of the circle, take up the contact so that I don't have a lot of slack in my line, and keep asking those hindquarters to yield away. I'm not asking for a whole lot of activity from him yet because we're just warming up at this point. And you can see he looks pretty stiff. And you'll see as we go that his stride becomes much bigger and more free, much more fluid and less choppy. So the things we need to keep in mind when we're lunging a horse is that you always want to keep them out on the circle. You can stay rather close to them, as I am right here, to try to encourage more activity, more energy out of them. But you do need to try to keep yourself still between the head and the tail and try to keep that triangle as much as you can. If you're very close to the horse, like sometimes I like to do the beginning stages of lunging almost as if I'm doing work in hand and stand kind of at the horse's shoulder. And if you're going to be that close, you do need to be up by the shoulder because they could potentially kick it at you. And you don't want to be where their hind legs could reach you if that were to happen. So another thing we need to keep in mind when lunging is that the horse needs to be responding to us. So when you use your whip, you should get a reaction. If you don't, like right there, then you need to make sure that you clarify. Because if you use an aid and don't get any reaction, then you're teaching the horse to ignore your aids. So right there, I had to get pretty firm with him to say, hey, Charlie, I need you to really move. And he ignored it, so then I had to reinforce that aid. With sensitive breeds like Thoroughbred, a lot of times you can use vocal cues, and I do with Charlie probably 99% of the time. I just use vocal cues, and he responds pretty well to that. When he does not respond to my vocal cue, then I typically back it up with a tap of the whip. Although sometimes you only need to sort of, follow behind them with the whip, as you can kind of see I'm doing. And sometimes that's enough to keep a more sensitive horse going. So you're not like flicking it at them. You're just kind of following behind them to encourage them to keep going forward with the whip. So at this point in the lunging session, I am asking for more activity from him. I am hoping that he will increase his speed, which he has. He's starting to take nice big steps and loosen up. I'm always thinking about getting his energy to come from the hind end, from a nice active swinging step under the body with the hind legs, which will then push the back up, and the result will be a nice stretched out neck and a nose that hopefully pokes in front of the vertical, and just a very nice relaxed horse that's working over its back. So when Charlie's head pops up, I respond by asking him to yield the hindquarters slightly away. And that actually helps his inside hind leg to step under the center of his body, which then pushes the back up. So here he's starting to get much more swingy, much more active. He doesn't always give me a very good stretch in the walk on the lunge line, and that is something we've been working on for a long time. There he goes, that's better. But he quickly loses it. That's actually pretty nice. But you'll see that he does get better as the video goes on. And I try to really reward him when he does move well over his back and relax down into a stretch. oftentimes when you see his head pop up, it's because I've used a verbal cue to try to get him to increase his speed a little bit. So I feel like for Charlie, this is a pretty good walk. He could be deeper in the stretch. Of course, he's not really stretching, but it's a nice active swinging walk, and he looks very relaxed, and he looks like he has someplace to go. Sometimes he just kind of crawls along really slowly, so I feel like this is better. The thing about the stretch that you also have to keep in mind is that you cannot force it. If you do manage to force it, it's not going to be right, because anything forced with a horse is going to create tension, which is the opposite of what we are trying to achieve. So it requires a great deal of patience and also a great deal of experimentation. You've got to kind of assess where your horse is at on any given day. You've also got to assess what's going on with your horse. Could there be any kind of physical issues or limitations? With Charlie, he certainly does have physical limitations. His lower back area is almost always in pain. And it's a very unfortunate thing, but I do the best I can with him in spite of this pain, and the work actually really helps him feel so much better. But if you're running into some resistance, it's always a good idea to have a body worker look at your horse. If you have anyone who does Masterson method massage, I highly recommend their type of massage, especially for more sensitive horses, because it's a very light pressure kind of massage therapy that that these more sensitive horses will actually tolerate, whereas if you've got a typical massage therapist who just goes in and starts poking and prodding, a lot of times these hot-blooded horses are very resistant to that, and they just tighten up all their muscles and won't really respond very well. So this is getting better. I do a long walk session with him before I do trot, because I feel like he really needs it. For the amount of time that he raced, and because he has lower back pain, I strongly suspect that he has arthritis, and I think he needs a minimum of 10 minutes of walk time, and oftentimes more like 15, because I just think it really helps him to loosen up before we do the trot. So starting out in the trot, he's always a little bit rushed. He always looks a little bit unbalanced, and he always coughs several times when he starts trotting. Kind of clears his airways. Charlie is one who is very tricky, because most of the time he is not active enough in the work for it to be beneficial to him. However, when you push him just a hair over what level of activity he's comfortable with, he'll explode. So what I mean by that is the past several months I have been trying very hard to get more activity from him, and the result was that he thought I wanted him to run and go back to being a racehorse. So it was almost like a mental switch went off in his mind that he thought, oh, I know what you want. And he proceeded to just gallop frantically around the ring. So it took me some time to convince Charlie that that is not what I wanted. I experimented with letting him run for a while to see if he would calm down, and unfortunately that was not the case. He's one of those horses that will actually become more and more amped up if you let them run, and being a thoroughbred, he could run for quite a while. So that's not a good way to go, especially because when he runs, he's not pretty. He looks very hollow and out of balance, and just nothing you would want him to be doing. So he is, like I said, a really tricky horse because I have to be very careful not to push him too far over the edge or he will explode. So I ask in like little teeny tiny millimeters worth of more activity from him. And I'm just trying to kind of squeeze a little bit more and squeeze a little bit more without upsetting him and making him tense and hollow. I almost was hoping he would explode on this video so you could see what I'm talking about. But I'm not, of course, I'm not going to instigate it on purpose because it's nothing that you would want. It's not quality work and it's not beneficial to him at all. So we have been working on trotting, and we've been working on trying to get a little bit more quality work in the trot. And at this point in the video, I do think he's working okay. I think he could do better. But for him, this is pretty good work. And there I asked for more, and he responded by throwing his head up and kind of resisting. So as Will Faber says, when a horse doesn't want to go, there's usually a reason why. So I really think in Charlie's case, the reason why he doesn't want to go more is because of his back pain. And I've come to the conclusion that I do need to have a veterinarian do x-rays, and unfortunately it's going to be very expensive, but we do need to figure out what's really going on, because up till this point I've been working with a massage therapist, working with an equine chiropractor and veterinarian, and trying to kind of see if we could solve his pain issues without doing a bunch of x-rays. We've tried several different herbal or like natural pain and inflammation treatments, but nothing has really helped him except for Equiox, which is an NSAID. It's an anti-inflammatory drug that it's, I think, typically used for arthritis. So that drug really did help him. He was really, really, really comfortable for about 4 months while he was on it. And then I tried taking him off of it because he was doing so well. I thought maybe he's better. But as soon as I took him off of it, he very quickly went back to being really painful. So at this point, I'm trying to get an appointment with the vet to do some diagnostics and figure out what's really going on, because I don't think that Charlie is going to be able to progress very well as long as this pain issue continues to hold him back. I mean, if you look at these videos that I'm producing now compared to the video I first submitted for the Associate Trainer program, I don't see a whole lot of improvement. I see maybe a little improvement, but I think the main reason why is because he just has some physical issues. So we need to figure out what those are and what we can do about it. So after I trot Charlie, I try to get him to give me a good stretch before I switch sides. In the walk, I mean. So that's what I'm doing right here. I'm asking him to really lift his back and stretch his neck out. And that's looking pretty nice. He could go lower. There. So he gave me just one good moment, and I decided that was enough for this particular day because we already did so much walking before. Now this next part, you will see my continued struggle with switching directions with the lunge line with Charlie. This is something he gets very anxious about, and I don't know why. He really fights me about switching sides with the lunge line, and I've tried a number of different things. At this point, I'm just trying to show him that I'm not going to hurt him. I'm not going to do anything bad. I just need to switch the line over. But as you can see, as soon as I let him go, he tries to just walk off. So I can't really let him go, and I don't have it clipped yet, so I can't let him go. But I'm trying to show him, if you'll just stop throwing your head, I'll let your head go. And there, he stopped, so I let go. And I tried to adjust to make sure that the line wasn't twisted, and he tried to walk away. So I responded by asking him to yield his hindquarters and face me. And then I petted him and went over to make sure that it was not twisted. And then he kind of fought me again, so I asked him to just relax. And as soon as he relaxed, I let go of his head. And then I asked him to yield his hindquarters again. And then I wanted to show him that there was nothing to be upset about with me handling his bridle or, touching the line around his head. So I petted him, and I went up and grabbed the side of his bridle, and I petted him again, and I ran my hand over where the line goes, just trying to show him that this is not something you need to get worked up over. And he responded really nicely. He took a big, deep breath. He gave a big sigh of relief, and so then we moved back onto our lunging work. But this is just something that he always struggles with, the switching of the line to the other side, and I try really hard not to make a big deal about it, but it's very frustrating, of course. So if anyone has suggestions or ideas, I'd be very happy to hear them. So again, when we switch sides, I'm going to do a little walk warm-up. He's already warmed up, so he really doesn't need a whole lot of walking this direction, but I still like to just make sure that I can get him to yield his hindquarters a little, and hoping that he will give me some good quality walk work before we go into the trot. I'm asking for more activity from him, and he responded by taking a little bit bigger steps. That's better. And that's better. So you want to keep your eye on their hock joint and kind of look to see if it's making more of a circle or more of a horizontal kind of motion. At this point, his hocks are not making quite as much of a circle as they need to be. That's getting better. Again, I apologize that I've got Charlie out of the screen for parts of this. I didn't realize that that was happening. Sometimes he tries to stretch, but he slows way down. So at this point in his training, he already knows that he should stretch. He knows that's a good thing and a good place to be. So I don't just let him do that anymore. I try very hard to, if he lowers his head but slows way down, I try very hard to just encourage him on right away. And the result is that his head pops up. But that's okay, because the goal now is not to teach him how to stretch. He already knows how to stretch. The goal now is to get him more active so that that energy can come from the hind end and travel through his back and extend out into a stretch, but that it would actually be quality work and it would actually be muscle building work. Because you have to always keep in mind that it's really not about the stretch. The stretch is the result of the correct work. If you've got a horse that's stretching but not active enough, you're not going to be building muscle. So that's getting better. And that's better. There, that was really nice. So if you were to go back and watch the very beginning of our video, you would see that he is now taking much bigger steps. Especially with his hind legs, he's taking much bigger strides. More activity and a nicer, deeper step under his body. He's much more fluid now than he was in the beginning. And that's looking nice. So I tried bringing him in on a bit smaller of a circle here at this moment, because I thought if I brought him in on a smaller circle, I would be able to affect his hind legs more so. And the result was he gave a really nice stretch. Like, that's looking really good. Yeah, that's really good. Actually, I'm remembering now that on this day I decided to do less trot work than I normally do and really do a lot more walk work because he seemed a little off that day. I don't know, it just seemed like maybe something was bothering him. So I decided to kind of make the workout a little less, because typically I do about 10 minutes of trot each direction, and I think I only did maybe 7, but I don't normally do quite that much walk. So this is his harder direction. I try to do his easier side first, and that way he's nice and loosened up for his harder side. And here I'm looking for a nice round circle of the hawk, which he's doing a good job. I'm looking for a nice big step under the body. I'm looking for his back, especially his lower back muscles, to be moving and lifting up. I brought him onto a slightly smaller circle there to try and activate the hind legs some more and get that inside hind to step deeper under the body. And I do think it benefited the work. So I like that he's nice and relaxed. I would like to see his whole body kind of stabilize more. He tends to kind of slow down, speed up a lot. Although this is looking pretty good. I'm looking for rhythmic motion of his legs. I'm looking for the two diagonal pairs to be matching perfectly, which they're pretty rhythmic. I think he got a little confused right there. There, that's looking good. Really nice. For Charlie, I would say this is good quality work, not excellent. I have seen him do significantly better than this in the trot. But this is not bad. You want to look at their tail to kind of see what their tail is saying. You can see here that his tail is nice and relaxed. It swings a little bit, but it's not constantly flicking, or it's not like he's holding it tightly down or anything weird. It's nicely swaying in rhythm. And their tail is an extension of their spine, so you can actually learn quite a bit from watching a horse's tail. This is looking pretty good. Could definitely still be more active. So right there I asked for more, and he kind of threw his head up a little. And that's looking a little better. So I asked him to walk because I felt like he was giving me a really good effort for that particular day. And I wanted to get some good stretches in the walk at the end as kind of a cool down. But I also wanted him to continue staying active, continue taking big, deep steps. At this point, he's completely warmed up, so we can ask more. And although you may be tempted to go ahead and stop watching the video at this point because we're almost done, I would ask you to stay and watch these last few minutes because this is where I think it starts to get a lot better. Like right there. That's looking pretty good. Got a little too slow, so I asked him to speed up, and he kind of threw his head up for a moment. But that's looking better. Right there. That's what we're looking for. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.